Hello. Today's podcast is a short case study of Kelsang Tharchin, a very important New Kadampa monk who was teaching in the New Kadampa for decades and who was a very important key figure of organizing the NKT situation, the NKT centers around the world, especially in Canada. He set up the first Canadian center. And also he had an important role in the different centers in the UK. So specifically Manjushri Center in Ulverston and Tarpa Center up in Scotland. And so this is a case study because I would like to show what happened to him. And what I'm intending to say is that what happened to Tharchin is not an isolated strange thing that happens to teachers in NKT, but it's something that is actually quite typical. So Tharchin died a few months ago in May, and there was this very weird publication. His student, I'm not going to name this student now, but one of his older students who actually took care of him in his older days, published a very strange photo that seemed a little bit AI manipulated. It showed Tharchin probably dead with his hands in prayer position. And that's a pretty typical sort of Tibetan way of setting up a monk when he dies. And so that was published, and that was published by this particular private individual. And there were a bit of weirdness there because first, the dates kind of changed in the photo. It's not actually really clear when he died precisely. But the thing is, there was no official communication from the NKT at all that he died. And it was a bit similar to when Kelsang Tharchin died, because when he died, I found out through another exposing group member and was just waiting for the NKT to publish it, and they never actually did. And I think we published it in the exposing group that he died. And eventually there was a communication from Luna Kadampa in the various NKT forums, but there wasn't much of an official sort of communication from the NKT management that Kelsang Tharchin died. And so it's not surprising that the exact same thing happened to Tharchin. So the question is, who was this guy and why is it important to talk about him? So Tharchin was a pretty beloved teacher as far as I could tell, and many people knew him because he had a very long career in the NKT. He taught for many, many decades. And like I said before, he set up various centers as well, especially in Canada. He was Canadian originally. His original name was Chip Rothermore. And so he was kind of considered as a legend, especially like I read a lot of posts by Kadampa Ryan, who is actually operating under a different name now on social media, but Tharchin apparently was his favorite teacher, and so he often wrote about Tharchin. And he was also considered sort of an enlightened bodhisattva. But there's also another line in the NKT. There were those who didn't like him, like for example Pakpa, Kelsang Pakpa didn't really like him, and a lot of other teachers as well. And because they thought that he was trying to establish another lineage or a separate new lineage within the NKT. So let's see who he was. Well, there's not much known about him actually. We just know that he was originally in the Manjushri Center under the FBMT and Lama Yeshe. So when Kelsang Tharchin arrived in England in the 70s, he was already there. So he was one of the first students of Kelsang Tharchin. Apparently, he went behind Lama Yeshe's back to support Kelsang Tharchin's sort of plan to establish a new center and a new sort of lineage outside the FBMT. And so he was a very, 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 very loyal student of Kelsang Tharchin. The next thing we know about him, and this is important, was that he was instrumental in blackmailing the FBMT and specifically Lama Yeshe regarding Manjushri Center. So it is his voice on the blackmail tape with which Lama Yeshe was blackmailed to hand over Manjushri to Kelsang Tharchin. And his name at that time was still Chip Rothermore. And so there is documented evidence that his voice is heard on this tape, which has come down to us as the blackmail tape. What he said in his tape, here's a quote. He says, "Please also appreciate that you, Lama, will probably have to go to court to answer questions and possibly even to stand trial if prosecuted. Trustee of the Manjushri Institute, which at this time was under Lama Yeshe's care, will probably go to jail, and possibly also other members of the FVMT." So basically, he and Kelsang Tharchin blackmailed Lama Yeshe, saying that if he doesn't hand over the property that is now Manjushri Mother Center in Alverston, the Priory, then Lama Yeshe and everybody else is going to go to jail. And so that's basically how that property got into the possession of the New Kadampa tradition. So this would be like the very, very first thing that we know about him. And then he was ordained, he became Kelsang Tharchin's faithful student, and apparently he became a really good teacher. I don't really know because I've never heard him teach. There is one video left up on YouTube where he's teaching, and I'm not going to go into that particular video now, but I will in the future about a particular teaching, and I'm saying teaching that I find really just wrong. And so I'm not personally particularly very impressed by the man. So there was this moment when Tharchin got excommunicated from the NKT. I've heard of a letter that was sent to him that kind of circulated at that time, and we're talking about 20 years ago or 15 years ago, and one of our members told me about this letter. He told me that he had seen this letter. We haven't been able to find this excommunication letter. Apparently, his sin was wanting to write his own books about Dharma, and that is an absolute no-no. We already heard, there's Neil Gillespie, who was also excommunicated because he wrote a book about happiness. That's all he did. And he was also a very, very important member of the NKT who raised millions and millions of dollars for the organization, and then he was just simply eliminated because he wrote this book on happiness. So Tharchin was removed. By this time, he was an older man. Let's remember someone who spent 20 years of their life in the NKT, or maybe 30 at this point. They have nothing else. There's no family, there's no financial foundation, there's no friends, there's no jobs, there's no pension fund, there's nothing. So when you get kicked out, that's tough. And apparently that's when he got Parkinson's. And the fact that he got Parkinson's is interesting. I do think that the stress itself might have contributed to his Parkinson's. Some members in the NKT actually say that his Parkinson is the result of the taking practice, taking people's suffering onto himself, and all of this taking made him sick. This is one version. Well, my version is that he just got sick because he got sick. I don't want to invoke karma here because I just don't think karma works that way exactly, but it's strange. It's strange that he got so sick, and around the time that he got sick, he was completely eliminated and kicked out of the organization. And they just didn't take care of him. They did nothing for him. The NKT, that is like such a wealthy organization, they never took care of him. So he was taken in by one of his students. It's the same individual that I didn't want to name before. And this older man, and he seems like a really, really nice guy, this guy who took care of Tharchin when he first had Parkinson's. And I actually think his Parkinson preceded his excommunication, because we have a video of him on an NKT place where he's already got the Parkinson. So I don't think he got the Parkinson because of the excommunication. I think that came after. But the fact is that he was removed and kicked out of the NKT when he was very, very sick. Think about it. This guy was, the entire Manjushri Center is in the NKT possession because of him. All that literature about the Dalai Lama that a lot of NKTers still sort of read and think it's the absolute truth. He was responsible for that. the centers in Canada. So you would think a rich organization like the NKT would show a little bit of gratitude, maybe compassion, love. I don't know. What do you think? So this gentleman who was taking care of him couldn't take care of him after a while because his condition worsened. And he somehow got into a care facility up in Scotland that was run by nuns, Catholic nuns. And so these Catholic nuns took care of him. And I'm not sure where the money was coming from. Maybe the NKT was paying. I don't think so. I think it was probably students. I'm not sure where the financing was coming from. And I don't know how much it cost. Somehow doubt it was the NKT that was paying for it. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they did. But anyway, he died lonely, alone. Apparently he was very happy though. Visitors said that he was happy, that he had a peaceful mind, and he died happy. But I've read mixed reports about him. There was also this guy online who wrote pretty bad things about him, and it seemed that there was a lot of issues with him. He was very doctrinaire, very radicalized, and could be cruel at times, it seems to me, from what this guy posted. So what can I say? It's a good example of what happens to people in the NKT. It's like they could have just taken him in. There's apparently a Tharchin Tower in Manjushri Center. People call it the Tharchin Tower, recognizing the fact, especially the older members know this, and recognizing the fact that he was so important, so instrumental in getting the Manjushri Center for the NKT. So they could have put him in the Tharchin Tower and taken care of him. They could have given him an opportunity to teach a little bit more, but the NKT is just scared. It's scared of everyone who wants to do anything that they don't condone. And so they really don't hesitate to just kick out their oldest teacher, and just not, like, this is just something that would never happen in an authentic Buddhist community. This is just something that does not happen in an authentic, whether it's Mahayana or Theravada, whatever. But it did happen, and it does happen. It continues to happen in the NKT. This is how they operate. I just read something this morning. It caught my attention. Somebody said the most important thing in the NKT is the organization's financial welfare. They don't care about its members at all. Nobody in the NKT truly matters. They only matter as long as they are useful for the organization. And so who is useful for the NKT? People who are strong, can work a lot, are absolutely reliable, keep going, saying the same 5 things that the NKT wants them to say, without ever voicing an independent opinion, without ever wanting to do something that truly comes from their heart or from their own mind. So that's it for today, yeah? Thank you so much for listening. Our first case study of the NKT.